Hi, everybody, and welcome to another exciting adventure in podcasting. Many episodes on this show focus on comics, and delighted to be talking with comics creator JK Woodward. JK, thank you for jumping in. Would you like me to call you JK? Does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, all right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll mention a couple of titles here at the top of the episode, and then we'll sort of go through some questions and explore a little bit. Of course, X-Men, there's a Wolverine over your shoulder at the moment, so good backup there. And so
Oh yeah.
X-Men is there. Okay. Star Trek, I just saw Halloween today. I think you posted that on social media, cover for that. So
Oh yeah. The
yeah.
Will Wolf.
Yes, yeah. Looking forward to that. Fallen Angel and Belladonna as well, being two books that I've enjoyed. So, lots out there to
Oh, thank
enjoy
you.
from you. That absolutely, yeah. That doesn't nearly cover what you've worked on and what you've done, but just a few titles there that folks might recognize you for. So
Mhm.
curious about what led you to the world of comics.
Oh, if comics was my entertainment of choice when I was a kid.
Mhm,
Mainly because it was more affordable than anything else. And it was plentiful. And it was on the spinner racks in the stores. This was like back in the 70s and 80s. So I've been into comics since I was a kid. Reading them and also wanting to draw them. I knew right away I didn't want to be um, I didn't want to be a civilian. I wanted to get in there.
mhm, mhm,
So I would look at the comics and imitate some of my favorite artists. The Messina, Kane, uh, Byrne, of course, Kirby. When I was a kid, and then later on, I would get into more like Sienkiewicz, and then much later Alex Ross. Um, and so I think it was always there, really.
mhm. Love it, love it. I love the spinner rack history. I think that could be its own podcast, sort of like
Yeah.
spinner rack kids and where they've been since then. So similar story here of exploring on spinner racks. Um, so curious about how you bring your vision to the page because when I see a page that you've done, I tend to know that it's yours, just based on some of the style, the methods that you use, thinking about Belladonna and some of those action scenes in Belladonna, and of course the world of Star Trek and other things that you've worked on. So just curious about that vision and how that comes to be.
Um, well, if you referenced Belladonna, and that's a little bit different from what I do normally because I actually did watercolor over pencils and left the pencil lines in, so it's
Ah, okay.
slight. Yeah, and whereas everything else I usually paint in gouache in a kind of photorealism,
Hmm, hmm,
um, much cleaner.
hmm,
Um,
hmm.
but Belladonna, I wanted to try something new because it was something new. I had been doing Fallen Angel for a very long time, and Fallen Angel was a different art style. I used pen and inks and digital colors,
Hmm.
much more traditional comic book style. But yeah, with Belladonna, this was my chance to try something new and see how it went. And then the second I got back into Star Trek, it was get back to painting. So I got back. You got to be careful what you start with because if you look at I think CSI New York with IDW and then eventually Fallen Angel right after that. I did that kind of painted style, and that's all I'm going to do from now on.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
they have their way. And I've tried and I've begged and I said, can I do something a little faster, a little more, a little easier? And they're like, well, we hired you for the painting, and whatever you start out in, that's what you're going to be doing. Probably, it's very hard to kind of switch styles in the middle of it.
Yeah, yeah. I was curious about that because I could tell that there's painting there. Do you have is painting the preferred medium, or do you like to expand and explore with different things when possible?
Um, yeah, painting. I am a painter. Like even when I'm penciling, I leave details out going like I'll fill that in with the brush.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I'm not painting and I'm using inks, I use an ink wash um, for the shadows. I don't leave much up to a colorist. Not that I've really worked with many colorists. That doesn't happen that often. I kind of just see the whole thing from start to finish. I wouldn't say like, I mean, I've never had anybody ink my work
Hmm. Hmm.
or paint over me. I think that's, I don't know if I could be a penciler or something like that. So yeah, in that sense, painting or that's kind of how I think. I would prefer something a little quicker. I wouldn't mind doing my own pencils and inks and having somebody color it, only because you could do a lot more in a lot less time.
Hmm.
The painting is pretty time intensive. That's the only part of it I don't like because I'll spend 20 or 30 hours on a page, which
Right.
means if I'm even gonna, if I want to get 4 pages a week done, I'm going to be spending at least 100 hours a week, and that doesn't leave much time for anything else. But I don't know. In my mind, it's worth it because there's not many people doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very unique look, and I'm just always impressed with the control that people can have in paint because it's just when I try to paint, it's not nearly as controlled. So it's certainly a special kind of talent.
Yeah, it's definitely takes a long time to master too. um, and I guess working with a brush with in paint can be kind of troublesome too. In fact, I work on 18 by 24 instead of 11 by 17 for that reason, because it makes it a little bit easier for certain details. But again, that makes it a little more time intensive too.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
harder to sell the originals because everybody has books that are 11 by 17 or
Right, right.
big art's harder to sell. But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So curious about the creative journey and people that have been particularly kind along the way, collaborations or most positive experiences that you've had. It seems that you enjoy crafting in the world of Star Trek, and I'm glad you do because I enjoy what you bring to those stories as well.
yeah, well, that's no mistake. Star Trek is something I always wanted to work on. And I think it was 2006 when IDW had gotten that property. And it
Hmm.
was, um, I guess maybe a year later was right around the time I was done with the run of Fallen Angel. Um, so that freed me up for something, and I definitely wanted Star Trek. I've been watching Star Trek with the original series in syndication since I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I haven't stopped. When I was in high school, when Next Generation came out, I watched all the movies before that, and I just kept. I haven't stopped. Um, so I was excited to work on the comics because I had read the Marvel, the 1 year Marvel run,
Hmm. Hmm.
and, the movie era, which I'm excited that they're revisiting the motion picture era now in the comics,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
DC run. I don't think I don't think I was there for the Malibu one. I think I dropped off for a little while and came back, with IDW. But always been a huge Star Trek fan. Always been a fan of the novels and the comics as well.
Hmm.
So like I said, I don't want to be in the stands. I want to be on the field. So
Yeah.
when an opportunity presented itself, I jumped on it, and I've been a pain in their ass ever since. Because I mean, if I hear something, I keep my ear to the ground. I hear something, I'm like, hey, I want that. So
Yeah, yeah, love it, love it. If you know what you like. I'm tempted to fashion a tractor beam metaphor here, but I'm not gonna do that. Um, so I know we have the Holodeck Halloween coming up. I'm looking forward to that because I haven't seen a Star Trek story quite like that. But curious about next creative directions, the worlds that you'd like to work in. Um, did we cover the last question before we move on to that, as far as positive experiences and collaborations and
oh
things of that
yeah,
nature?
no, thank you for reminding me. I got off. You got to keep me on track here.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I had to like jump back on my track too, so it works.
Yeah, nothing but positive experiences, really. Chris Rael was the guy that first kind of discovered me, basically. And he's always been really easy to work with. In fact, he was the editor on one of my favorite um, books to work on. It was a 5 issue miniseries based on Harlan Ellison's City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, it's
Um,
such a great book.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, and part of the experience I really enjoyed is I was also working with Harlan Ellison, which that was an incredible experience. It was
Mhm.
scary meeting him, uh, but having met him and getting to know him turned out to be one of the best experiences of my life. And we had stayed friends up until his death after the book. Um, and of course, I really enjoy working with the Tiptons. In fact,
Mhm.
you'll notice I worked with them more probably than any other writer in Star Trek. Um, because we kind of have a shorthand after a while and a collaborative process. They invite me in, started as what's your wish list for what's coming up, and then it turned into like just being there for the meetings and outlining the story. So I kind of got
Mhm.
to be part of the plotting, and that's kind of how I like to do comics. I like to do it old school, where artists were doing had a lot more to do with the storytelling than just here's your script, shut up and do it. You know,
Right, right.
so you know, so to me that was much more gratifying, and that's probably that, and they know their Trek.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we kind of enjoy each other's company. We enjoy talking about Trek, and I like the way I that we work together.
Love it, love it. You are the second person I've talked to in the past few days that has a Harlan Ellison connection, and the second person just to speak so highly of him. I talked with John K. Snyder III over this past weekend, and we were talking about
Yeah.
Harlan Ellison and just what a wonderful collaborator he was, and how he took such interest in the work that people were doing in art with his stories and storytelling.
Oh, very much so. He's also very protective of other
Mhm.
artists. He's always asking me, "Are they treating you all right, kid?" You know, so he's sort of a champion in that regard to because he knows he's probably been stepped on more than a few times. He knows how it is, and
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, and he genuinely does take an interest, probably more so than anybody ever has
Mhm.
with me. So I kind of, it was kind of a good feeling
Mhm.
to be able
Mhm.
to talk about your work and to somebody who's legitimately interested in the work. Not necessarily Star Trek, not necessarily his own story, just the work itself.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is an important distinction.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. Um, so we can circle back around to that question of next creative directions, and that could be. I know that sometimes things that you're working on can't be mentioned, but that could be something that you're working on that you could talk about, or even something that you'd like to work on in the future. And then also, if there are web spaces or resources like that that you'd like to share for listeners so that they can find what you're doing.
Mhm. Well, as far as the direction I'm going now, and it was kind of a blessing that Halloween opportunity for that cover came about because I've been pivoting more towards horror and
Ah.
spending still doing Trek. I'm still doing covers, but I'm not doing
Mhm.
any sequentials because I've been working more in horror. Some of the things I've been doing just recently came out was the Kolchak 50th anniversary celebration, which was put together by editor James Aquilone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, I think he got a Stoker for that one. He keeps getting awards. I can't keep up with him, but it was an anthology series, and I did two stories, one 18-page and one 12-page. And the 12-page story had me teamed up with Peter David again, which was a
Yeah.
delight. And that was something. It just came out about I don't know 4 to 6 months ago, but
Mhm.
I had done that particular story over a year ago before his last stroke. And
Yeah.
then the other author I worked with on the 18-page story was R.C. Matheson, which was the son of the original writer for
Yeah. Yeah.
Kolchak. So yeah, that was great. It was a over 180 pages. It was a hardcover. There were several other artists and writers. Peter Gate, yeah. No, who am I thinking of? Steve Niles, Jerry
Mhm.
Ordway did one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, there was I'm not sure how many stories in all, but they were all short stories. But they all took a decade of Kolchak's life, starting from high school all the way to old age. Implied demise, I think, but they won't. they won't comment on that. But I feel like the second you turn the last page, that's where he died. But
Ah,
it spans his whole life, and it's from Moonstone Books, which actually had a Kolchak series for a while, but they were doing a very familiar Kolchak, but in our world, and
mhm,
him
mhm,
holding a cell phone didn't seem right to me. So I like that we did a story that was actually in the timeline. So there was a 70s part that was during the series and the movies that we're so familiar with.
mhm,
The
mhm.
story I did happened to be during the McCarthy era, and one was just before the series, Vietnam in 1969. So, but we covered all eras, and that was pretty cool. That was the story I always wanted to see with Kolchak.
Love that.
Um,
Love it.
I did another horror anthology called Shakespeare Unleashed, where I did the cover and some illustrations for it, and a Romeo and Juliet sequel, which is a zombie story, of course.
Love it. Love it.
um, and now, that was a lot of fun, and I've just been doing a lot of covers and stuff, and it's been mostly horror. So yeah, when that Halloween came out, Star Trek never had a Halloween episode. How do you do that?
Mhm, mhm.
You can't really have holidays in the 24th century.
Right.
So that was cool because the holodeck's always going wrong, and it always is a horror story. So why not do that on Halloween? So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Just now they had the first musical episode, so
Yeah,
continuing
I
to
thought I
break
was
ground.
gonna hate that. I really was. I was like, I was gritting my teeth watching it. I was like, and then I saw the K-pop Klingons, and I'm like, I'm sold.
You're in. Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, I was joking about that the whole episode. I'm waiting for that. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see the Klingons. But I thought, I had assumed it was going to be like Klingon opera or
Mhm.
something like that, like Malota or something.
Yes, they
But
definitely took it in a unexpected and entertaining direction. I'll say that.
yeah, it was delightful. Come
It
on.
really was. Yeah, it really
Yeah,
was.
I liked it.
Yeah. Well, I could travel on to talk about that as well. But I won't keep you. Did we miss anything in the talk through that you want to make sure to mention? I mentioned web spaces, things like that, where people can
Oh
go and,
yes.
and check
Oh, and
things out.
also future projects coming up,
Yes,
which is
yes.
you're right. I can't talk about them, but I can tell you that I'm teaming up with Keith, Star Trek writer Keith DeCandido again. I had worked with him before on I think Alien Spotlight, 4,000 Throats. It was like a Klingon story.
Mhm.
Um, we're working again, and it's a 5-issue miniseries. I can't say any more than that, but I'm very excited to be working with him again.
Wonderful.
Um, and then I have a very special project. It's something I've been working on for maybe the past 6 years, and I keep doing a little bit, putting it on the shelf, doing a little bit, putting it on the shelf because I don't really have much time. Well, I finally talked to James Aquilone, the aforementioned James Aquilone, about it. It's a horror
Hmm.
story, and we could be looking for that on Kickstarter soon. We're gonna kickstart that, but it probably won't be till like first quarter next year. So, but that
Wonderful.
one I'm excited about. That's all mine.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's nice when I can work on my own property.
Well, and with your style, looking forward to seeing how you capture atmosphere in that project because I'm just in my mind sort of imagining sort of the imagery that's usually associated with horror. So really looking forward to seeing how that comes together.
Well, even in Star Trek, I kind of paint with a lot of noir lighting,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I always kind of have a mood and a darkness to it,
Yeah,
and creatures and gore. That's all you got to add, and you got horror. So
there it is. There it is.
yeah, so yeah, I can't wait for everybody to see it. In the meantime, you can check out Kolchak. I paint some pretty good demons in that.
Nice, very nice. And it's a who's who, as you said, of all sorts of wonderful comics people, Peter David, Jerry
Mhm.
Ordway. So very exciting
Gabriel
things.
Hardman. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Gabriel Hardman's in it. Yeah, writing and doing the art.
Nice, nice.
So yeah, there's a bunch.
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
names, no small names in this.
Very cool. Very cool. Any web spaces, things like that to leave with readers for the show notes.
Um, really, I just have the social media.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you follow if you follow me on Instagram, I do a lot of the time lapse photography of stuff I'm working on. I try to do at least one of those a week and post a lot of work. So it's JK underscore Woodward um, on all platforms. So I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Instagram, uh, Twitter or X, whatever the fuck it is. uh,
It may change by the time this
yeah,
drops, so who knows?
I'm even on Mastodon. So yeah, it's all the same. JK underscore Woodward. Um, I have a blog. I still have a blog spot that I
Hmm.
do. I use that to do all my announcing for commission lists. So every quarter, check that out if you're interested in a commission. It's jkwoodwardart.blogspot.com.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, did we miss anything in the talk through to make sure to mention before we close out?
I don't think so. I don't know when this is coming out, but I'll be at New York Comic Con, Artist
I'll make
Alley.
sure it
So
drops before then. Yep.
okay, yeah, come see me there. I'll Artist Alley. I don't know my table offhand.
Check
um,
the website, check the listing.
check the yeah.
Yep.
I'm easy to find. I have big old sign. So
Wonderful,
I'll be
wonderful.
bringing a lot of original pages and artwork there, as well as some new books you may not have heard of. So yeah, come by or just come by with your books, and I'll sign them and say hello. No.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Thank you for talking with
Yeah,
me, and looking forward to the work to come.
yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, anytime, anytime.